B'Shem HaShem Naaseh v'Natzliach. Great to be here. Ner Avraham. Baruch HaShem, thank you for having me. It's been an extraordinary journey over the last few years of giving Shurei Torah in different places around the world. Here in Florida where we live, but also in Jerusalem, in Netanya, in New York, in Arizona. Also an amazing Bukharian Kehillah over there. We did a Shabbaton over there. Also in New York, and B'ezrat Hashem continuing to do things all over the world, B'ezrat Hashem. So the question is, why? Why would somebody in their right mind leave Wall Street, where on a bad month we'd make $200,000 if we worked half the month, and leave everything and go work for free after you lose everything already? So it's not like you're still living off of millions. So I've said the story of my, Baruch Hashem, my tshuva story a few times, but today, with Siyata Dishmaya, I want to do something a little different for some of the fans that have been watching the story a few times already. A lot of people tell me that, since usually the story is a little long and there's not enough time for questions and answers. So usually the way I tell the story is I tell the story and I usually have some idea to combine the story with. The good news is I have no idea other than the story, I have no idea what else I'm going to say. So I'm going to ask you for help, to ask me a few questions now, but I'm only going to answer them during the story. So I'm sure that all of us have had some type of questions, whether it's about God, or it's about Judaism, or it's about the rules, or about something. So if anybody has any specific questions, you could ask. If not, then we'll continue and we'll figure it out from there. But if anybody has specific questions about why we're even in the world, why be a Jew, why be a religious Jew, what is a Jew, all these purpose of life questions that at some point or another we all have to ask ourselves. If it's not when we're still young, then at some point when we get old. So does anybody have any questions at all? We all know the entire Torah. Usually the first time I ask if anybody has any questions, nobody has any questions. When I turn off the camera, everyone has questions. So if you want, I can turn off the camera. So I'm going to start with the story. If anybody has any questions, you can ask along the way. You don't worry about interrupting. It's fine. It's not a speech. I didn't write anything down. This is just books, and I'm hoping they're going to tell me what to say. So, where do we begin? In the year 1990, my father decided that it's time for us to join him in the United States. He already came to the United States, I believe it was 1989. And he decided that it's time for us to move to the United States from Israel and start a new life. Now, as a 10-year-old boy, not much of this really mattered to me. All I knew is that I was changing friends. Now, the only problem is that I didn't know that these new friends are not going to speak the same language. Because the only thing that I knew when I came to the United States was ABC. Literally just ABC, because it was in a cereal box. Other than that, I did not know a word of English. But needless to say, when you're 10 years old, you could learn the language pretty quickly. But the American education system needs a little of education. The reason is because after about a year, I was already fluent in English, and I passed the ESL test. But for whatever reason or another, at the time, I'm assuming the public school system is still the same, they thought that if you don't speak the language, that means you're retarded. It means you have a mental deficiency. Little did they know that the education system in most schools outside of the United States are usually superior. So for example, my math, when I was 10 years old, was the equivalent of math of someone that was already in high school. Not because I was a genius, simply because that was the education system in Israel. So I came to the United States and I didn't understand why they were doing math for what I did when I just got into first grade. It didn't make any sense to me. So they sent me, after I passed the ESL test, instead of sending me to a normal class with normal people, they sent me to a class where there was special education. So one of the guys in the class looked like he was 30 years old, even though we were all 11. He had a beard. Another guy, I think he was a father. Another guy, I don't know if he spoke at all. He looked like a murderer, though. And each one of them was one better than the other. This was in New York. This was in New York. And again, this is one of the downsides when you go to the traditional public school system. Even though we were born into a relatively religious family, little by little each generation that doesn't hold strong to the Torah gets further and further from the truth. So by the time we came to the United States, all bets were off. Meaning, you come to America, you be American. You start going to McDonald's, you start going to public school, you become a goy. But you still think of yourself as a Jew because you, sometimes when you don't know enough Torah, you don't think that Torah and Judaism necessarily have to go together. You think it's an elective. It's like something nice. It's like something religious people do. But the question we have to ask ourselves is, what makes you Jewish? What makes you Jewish? Is it the fact that your mom was Jewish? If that's your answer, then I could tell you you're wrong. Because Rabbi Akiva, one of the greatest sages that ever lived, his mom wasn't born Jewish. She was born a goy. But she converted to Judaism. So did the parents of Rabbi Meir Baal HaNes, which every Sephardic woman loves to say his name and puts at least 5 or 6 candles a week for him. So did some of the greatest sages that ever lived throughout Jewish history. They weren't born Jewish. As a matter of fact, each one of you that reads Parashat Shavua, at some point you're going to read a name called Onkelos. Onkelos himself was not born Jewish. He was a convert. And from him, in the Gemara Masechet Avodah Zarah, we actually learn about the minhag of kissing the Mezuzah. You ever wonder, why do we kiss the Mezuzah? We learn it from a ger. We learn it from a convert. So the fact that your mom was Jewish doesn't make you Jewish. Because sometimes your mom is not Jewish, but you're Jewish. What's the other thing that can make you Jewish? I speak Hebrew. There's plenty of Palestinian terrorists that speak Hebrew. Doesn't make you Jewish. What makes you Jewish? The question is, when did we become Jewish? Before Mount Sinai, we were called Bnei Israel. We were called the sons of Israel, sons of Yaakov. But we're all considered Noahites, because there was no Torah yet that we had to comply with. We had a Torah, but we didn't have to comply with it the same thing like we had to do after Mount Sinai. What happened in Mount Sinai? We received the laws, we received the Torah. At the moment Moshe Rabbeinu received the Torah and he came down from Mount Sinai and he says, here, these are the laws, we became Jewish. Meaning that the only thing that changed at Mount Sinai was not the personalities, was not the mothers, was not the cousins, was not the traditions. It was the laws. Hashem says, you're officially Jewish. So what makes us Jewish is whether or not we follow the Torah. And this is the reason why, for anyone who doesn't know, Rambam in Ilchot Shabbat says that a Jew that does not keep Shabbat doesn't keep Shabbat. He wants to drive on Shabbat, even though his grandfather was a tzaddik and a rabbi. His father, amazing tzaddik, tomech b'beit knesset, but him, he doesn't feel connected to it. He wants to drive on Shabbat. So the Rambam says if you drive on Shabbat, you're lighting fire. If you light fire on Shabbat, it's chilul Shabbat. And mechalel Shabbat b'faresya is considered an idol worshipper. That's a problem. That puts his Judaism on suspension. It puts his Judaism on suspension. He can't be used as a witness in a religious ceremony. He can't be used as someone as a witness for chuppah and kiddushin. It's a problem. So, in a minyan, he cannot be counted. Cannot be counted. Why? Because his Judaism is on suspension. Why? Because he wanted to drive to the mall on Shabbat. So for a silly drive to Shabbat, drive to the mall, he decided to put his entire ancestors' history and his own history on suspension. For 3,300 years, we're fighting for survival. The Egyptians wanted to kill us. The Spanish Inquisition, all the pogroms, the Nazis, the Greeks, the Romans, the Turks, everyone and anyone that ever existed that had weapons wanted to kill us. We all survived. Why? Because we had unity. But not unity because we liked each other. Unity because we had Torah. So now this Torah traveled 3,300 years for us to be Jewish. And someone that drives on Shabbat to the mall to go get a drink for $3.50 from Starbucks just put his Judaism on suspension that they've been fighting for 3,000 years. Kind of silly. Now, I didn't know this. So most of my life, my Judaism was on suspension. So when they sent me to special ed, I didn't think I belonged there. Little did I know that in regards to my Judaism, I did. In regards to overall intellect, I didn't. So, little by little, I grew up in the ladder. By the time I was in 8th grade, I started taking high school classes. By the time I was in 9th grade, I started taking college classes and became what you call a Talmid Chacham, but in the secular world. Went to a top state school, had nearly a perfect GPA. Everything was wonderful. All while I had 3 jobs in high school and was making $100,000 a year as a 17-year-old kid. Had 2 newspaper routes, but newspaper routes were making only $250 a week. So I decided to pay somebody else $20 so he could actually do all the jobs so I could still collect $230. So that gave me more time to play some sports. I played football in high school. Not the Israeli football, the European football, the American football where every person is 6'5" and much bigger and faster than me, but for some reason I was attracted to the sport. So imagine a small, short Jewish guy playing with these giants. I thought it was a good idea. And I had jobs. I sold shoes, I sold clothes, I sold computers, I sold anything that I possibly could. I worked in flea markets and stores and tried to do whatever I can to help the family. But eventually, at the age of 18, I realized that I didn't want to be a doctor, I didn't want to be a lawyer, and I didn't want to be in school for the next 8 years to go start doing the same thing that I already know what I want to do now. What do I want to do? I want to make money. That's all I wanted to do. I had no interest whatsoever in any specific profession. Originally, I came into college thinking maybe I'll be a psychiatrist, psychologist. But then after taking a few biology and chemistry classes, it bored me, and I said, this is not for me. And I don't think it's worth it for me to wait 8 years to become a lawyer because I'm already making almost as much as him. So let me go find a way to make more money. So I was introduced to Wall Street. Now in Wall Street, on TV, it looks great. On TV, everyone wears a suit. Everyone looks civilized. Everyone looks like they're honest, genuine people. Once you actually get on it, it's a little bit different. A little different, just a little. So for the first 3 years of being on Wall Street, I did what they call pay the dues. I worked for other people, made them millionaires, while they at most paid me $1,000 a month. They would make $40,000, $50,000, $100,000 a month off of my work, and at best, they'd pay me $1,000 a month and maybe give me a tie as a bonus. That was the first 3 years. Eventually, I worked at a firm called Raymond James, which was a big firm. They had about maybe 5,000, 6,000 brokers. I was just about 21. The partner that I had decided to quit after September 11th. And it was my opportunity to shine. It's my opportunity to finally go on my own, not have any bosses, not have any partners. So I told the owner of the branch, listen, the guy that I was working with wasn't exactly a honest person. I want to be on my own. I don't want to have a boss. I don't want to have a partner. I don't want to have anything. He says, no problem. You'll have $5,000 a month in bills just to walk in. For the computer, for the secretary, and for a bunch of other fees that you'll have to make up somehow. So he said, do you have the money? I said, no, absolutely not. I've been making $1,000 a month. So how are you going to pay me? I said, I have no idea. But if I leave and I go to another firm, I have to start all over again. He said, okay, so what are your intentions here? This is a question that I will never forget in my life. The owner of the branch, he was in the business for about almost 20 years at the time, much older than I was. I was a 20-year-old little nothing with a ponytail and a lot of bravery. And he asked me, what are your intentions here? So the first thing that came to my mind was to buy you out. He found it interesting and he said, okay, no problem, just make sure the money's here on time. And I had my chance right after September 11th, which anyone that knows a little bit about the stock market wasn't exactly the best time for the stock market. But that was the time that HaShem decided I was going to start in the business. Now, when you don't have any clients, and now you don't have a salary, not even the $1,000 a month, you still have expenses. Now, somehow you have to pay for those expenses. So to pay rent, I sold my car. For food, I borrowed $1 every day from this guy, Dimitri, so I bought a donut for 50 cents and coffee for 50 cents, and that was my food for the day. The bus cost $1.50 each way at that time. Now, I didn't have the $1.50. So at 5:30 in the morning, when I would get on the bus, I'd pretend I had the $1.50 by telling the bus driver that the Metro card is going to go in, it's going to have $1.50 in it. Now, when the machine said it doesn't have $1.50 in it, I said, oh, it's the wrong Metro card. It's the wrong card. Let me get you a new one, and I'll be right back. But I don't want to hold anybody up. There's other people behind me, so let me go to the back of the bus. I'll put my stuff down. I'll come back with the $1.50. Now, may Hashem forgive me for my sins, but I never came back. I went back to the back of the bus. I fell asleep, and right before I fell asleep, I did Kriyat Shema, praying for him not to call me and kick me out of the bus when he realizes that I'm not coming back because I don't have the $1.50. And the same thing would happen at 12 o'clock at night when I finished work. So you start the day at 5:30. By the time you get home, it's 1:30. You find time to sleep for a couple of hours. And in between, you eat a donut and you have coffee. That's Wall Street. Welcome. So, 6 months later, living off of $1 a day and sneaking on the bus and getting thrown out a few times, which was a good kaparat avonot for the embarrassment, I made my first $5,000. Out of the $5,000, I had to pay something to the boss. So by the time everything was paid, I had $1,000 left. For me, it was all the money in the world. $1,000, the first $1,000 I made, right in the beginning of 2002, somewhere around maybe March or April of 2002, it was like I made $1 million. Little did I know that only a year later it would be. The next month, it was $5,000. The next month, it was another $5,000. The next month, it was 10. After that, it was 17. In November of 2002, barely a year after I started working in this office, I broke an office record and I made $117,000 in 1 month. Now, I became the top guy in the office, the guy that didn't have food just a few months earlier. 6 months later, I became the number 3 biggest producer in the entire country for all 6,000 people that work for the company. A bad month would be $150,000 to $200,000. It was time to move on. I had to decide, do I stay at this firm or do I start my own? Now, my motto was always, I'd rather die living my own dream than be comfortable living somebody else's.
You compared the cost of Oprah and Howard Stern,
right,
and you did it a little differently than most people. What did you find? Explain it to us.
Well, the thing is, though, is that Wall Street has made every analyst have their own proprietary way of analyzing things, which is very complicated for the individual investor to understand. These cash flow analysis, the PE ratios, everything that the average investor out there, whether they have money or not, can't understand. We did it the simple way. You know, Howard Stern has approximately a 4-hour show just on one of his stations, not including the second one, per day, 5 days a week, which is about 1,040 hours a year.
Right.
He's getting paid $100 million a year for him and his crew, which is about $93,000 an hour.
Right.
Granted, it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Okay, it's obviously a lot of money, but because of his track record in the past, because he's already brought in at least 1 million subscribers, that pays for it. Now, Oprah, on the other hand, is getting paid $55 million for 3 years, which is about $18.3 million a year. Okay, now she's only going to do a 30-minute show per week. That's it.
Oh.
I don't really think that anybody is going to subscribe to just, you know, a little bit extra if they're a big fanatic of Oprah, just for that extra 30 minutes. And when you do the math, 30 minutes a week is 26 hours a year, which is about $705,000 an hour. If she was spending just as much time on XM as Howard Stern is, then her contract would be worth about $3.7 billion. Okay, now, this is not...
So I decided to go and decided to start my own company. Little by little, I started hiring people. Little by little, the money started getting big. Made the first million, made the second million. But if the first couple of years we were making $1 million, by the time 2004, 2005, and 2006 came, we were already getting to the point where we were printing money. Everything was wonderful. Now, one trait that HaShem created me with, it's absolutely no credit to me whatsoever, is that I never actually cared for money. I never bought toys. We've made plenty of money. But I was never one of those people that bought fancy cars or bought a jet. The fanciest thing I had was my house. And the only reason I bought it was because it was 5 minutes from my office on Wall Street. That's it. Other than that, it was a regular car. It was a sports car, but it was, I don't know, $100,000 car. If you're making $200,000, $300,000 a month, $100,000 car is not exactly a big deal. Most kids that are 18 and don't even have credit somehow get their parents to buy them a $100,000 car today. My money went to two things. One, back into the business, to make it bigger, to build the next Goldman Sachs, to build the next Merrill Lynch, to build the next big empire. Second thing was to invest it into the stock market, because I was my own biggest investor. But the last part was to help people. Anybody that came to my door, if they needed something, they got it. Why? Because for me, money, for whatever reason or another, Hashem told me money is the same thing as a hammer. Now, did any one of you ever pray for a hammer? Anybody ever get excited when they found a hammer? Anybody ever have a hard time giving somebody else a hammer when they asked you if you have a hammer and you have a hammer? No, because it's a hammer. Money's the same thing. Hammer is a tool, money is a tool. And I used to always tell people, money will never make you happy. It'll just arrive to your problems with a limo. You'll have problems regardless, different problems, money problems, but you'll arrive to the problems with a limo. That's it. That's all it will do. It's the same thing as any other tool. Unfortunately, today, most people don't know this. Most people chase money as if it's God. And Hashem already warned us about this many, many years ago in the Torah, and He says, don't worship the God of money, the God of gold. Elohei kesef, Elohei hazav. God of silver, God of gold. Kesef is also money. Kesef is also silver. Don't go to those gods. Don't worship money. Many of us are going to fast on Tisha B'Av, Chorban Beit HaMikdash. But it's very hard to connect to something that happened 2,000 years ago. Because we all say, listen, they had problems back then. There was idolatry. There was murder, there was sinat chinam, there was all these different things. Like, I'm not an idol worshiper. I didn't murder anyone. I don't hate my neighbor. Unless he's Ashkenazi. Unless he's Yemenite. Unless he's from a different tradition. But I don't hate him that much. But the reality of it is that most of us are still idol worshipping. We still have the same problem from the first Beit HaMikdash. Now, anyone that has a dollar bill in there, take it out, and you see, on the dollar, it says, in God we trust. All of you read this one time, right? In God we trust. Now, this is a misnomer. What's the confusion here? The problem is that most people that read this, they think that the God they're talking about is the dollar. And this is why people spend most of their lives chasing it. Someone that worships money will do everything they can to hold on to it and to get it. They'll even sell their family for it. How many times did you hear horror stories about families breaking up because they all got an inheritance? Abba and Ima were rich, they died, and the family broke up because of it. Why? Because he got 5 million, the other one got 6 million, and the other one got 10 million, and they all hate him. Or even worse, brothers start a business. Everyone is friends. They're both 18 years old. They start a business. They both have $5 to their name. A few years later, they make it good. They start making money. They both get married. They have kids, but the wives don't like each other. Why? Because she's from here and he's from here. She has this hair, she has that hair, she has this dress, she has that dress. His house is bigger. Why is our house smaller? Why does he get to go on vacation and we don't? Eventually, the partnership breaks up, and the brothers don't want to talk to each other for the next 20 years. Why? Because he got 51% and I got 49%. And I hate him for it. So for 1%, you lose your brother. 1%. When you started the business, you'd give him 90%. 1%, you lose your brother. Why? Eloi kesef, Eloi azav. We love money. We're connected to it. That's the problem. That's the beginning of the problem. So continuing with my story is that I liked making money. But as far as money itself, didn't care about it. So whenever someone came to me, I valued my time. So I said at that point in 2006, by May of 2006, I broke my own personal record and I made $1.6 million for the month. And I said, okay, so at this point, in this rate, I'm making approximately $3,000 an hour. So at $3,000 an hour, I don't really want to waste an hour listening to anyone's story. So if anyone comes and needs something, the easier thing to do is instead of listening to an hour and then giving them $5,000, let me just say, how much does the problem cost? 5 seconds into it. And because that's really all they want. Little did I know that it's really insensitive, but the point is, that's what they want. They want money. So they start talking, and sometimes they're upset, and I say, okay, fine. How much does it cost? Oh, it's $5,000. Like, okay, fine, raise a check. Saleh shalom. Good luck. And everyone was happy. Everyone got their problem solved, whether it was a brother, a parent, a Chabadnik, religious, not religious, didn't make a difference. I had money, they needed it, give it to them. If I got all those loans back, I'd be a millionaire again. But now, a couple of years before that, my memory served me right, and even though I wasn't keeping really many mitzvot, kept kosher to the extent that I understood, just eat meat at home and vegetables outside and pasta outside. Little did I know that the vegetables and the pasta outside have meat in them. Sometimes it's worm meat, sometimes it's pork meat. Anyone that eats pizza in a non-kosher place, just so you know, it's not the problem with the milk. It's the problem that you're eating milk and meat. It's not the milk. The milk is not the problem. It's no problem. Eat whatever. Any milk you buy in a store in America has kosher sign on it. So the milk they use in the cheese is not a problem. It's not a problem. It's the problem that in order to make the cheese, they use meat. In order to make the sauce in the pizza and Pizza Hut, Domino's, all non-kosher pizza has meat in it. That's the difference. You have 5 pizzerias in New York on one block. Why do they all have different taste? Different meat. So if you're eating non-kosher pizza, the problem is not the milk. It's the meat that's the problem. I didn't know this. I didn't know that when I'm eating pizza with just cheese on it, I'm really eating not only milk and meat, but usually the meat is pork. Because it's the cheapest meat. So now I thought I was keeping kosher. I would go to shul once or twice a year, Yom Kippur, of course. Rosh Hashanah, maybe. Pesach, never. But I'd eat matzah. Traditional. I didn't know that Shabbat was bigger than Yom Kippur. I didn't know that Shabbat is bigger than all the holidays. I didn't know that Shabbat is to such an extent that Chazal says that we have 613 mitzvot from HaShem and 7 mitzvot from the rabbis. Most people think it's 613 mitzvot from rabbis and 7 from HaShem. It's really 613 from HaShem and 7 from rabbis. Rabbi Noach sometimes. So now those 7, what are those 7? Your favorite mitzvot. Which are those mitzvot? Who likes Hanukkah? Like Hanukkah? That's a rabbinical mitzvah. Purim? Every secular person on earth likes Purim. Rabbinical. Blessing before you eat something? It's rabbinical. Most of the mitzvot people like are rabbinical, but they always complain against the rabbis. What's God's mitzvah? Shabbat. Now Chazal says that if you keep, somehow you find a way. It's not possible, but somehow you find a way to keep 619 out of the 620 mitzvot. The 620. 613 plus 7. You kept 619 out of the 620. Now you can't, because some of them are for Kohanim, some of them are only for women, some of them are only for men. In today's age, maybe you could be a man and a woman, but in Torah you can't. Some of them are only for the Bet HaMikdash. You can't keep all of them. But let's say you found a way, you found a trick, you found a loophole. You want to be extra tzaddik. Extra tzaddikah. You kept 619 out of 620. The one mitzvah you're not keeping is Shabbat. One. Chazal says the other 619 are worth 0. And the reason why is because you're keeping them for the wrong reason. What's the wrong reason? Wrong reason is you're keeping it because you like it. Not because God gave it. Because you don't believe in God. Why? Because God said, according to the Gemara, Masechet Shabbat, page 119, he says, you want to be my partner? You could be my partner by being my witness. Witness that I created the world in 6 days and I stopped creating. Kivyachol, I rested on the 7th day. Obviously, Hashem doesn't rest, He doesn't sleep, but He stopped creating on the 7th day. Now, I need someone to testify this is what I did. By you not creating on the 7th day, you not driving on Shabbat, you not playing with your phone on Shabbat, you not watching TV on Shabbat, you not smoking a cigarette on Shabbat, you are acting as a witness that you believe that I created the world in 6 days and I stopped creating on the 7th. By doing that, you're a partner. You're a partner. We're partners. By you not doing it, you're saying it didn't happen. By you not keeping Shabbat, you're saying, I didn't create the world in 6 days. Maybe it took me longer. Maybe it's like the scientist said, it was 13 billion years. Maybe I needed to hire construction companies, had a delay. Maybe I needed to borrow some money. So I needed to apply for a mortgage, so it took me a few million years. I didn't create it in 6 days. Maybe, like the Goyim say sometimes, and sometimes Jews, maybe I didn't create it. You're not a partner anymore. You're not a witness. I need a witness. So, if a Jew decided to keep 619 out of 620 mitzvot, and the one mitzvah is missing, is Shabbat, the 619 don't work. What is it like? If someone told you today, I have a deal for you. All you have to do is call me tomorrow at 8 o'clock in the morning. At 8 o'clock in the morning, right after you email me your name, phone number, and address. So email me your name, phone number, and address, and then the number, my number, will automatically work. But if you don't email me, the number doesn't work. Simple. If you do this, you get $1 million. Simple enough? Simple. What's the email? He gives you the email. What do? First thing you do, you go home, take a rest, have a barbecue? No, first thing you do is you go email. Go to the phone, start emailing. All of a sudden you see, return to sender. Why? There's an error. Email doesn't go through. You send it again, email doesn't go through. You send it again, email doesn't go through. You call them, the phone doesn't work. Because the key to the safe is the email. You send it, it doesn't work. You're running out of time. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. You only have 6 hours. Or you lose $1 million. You work on it, you work on it. You call the tech support, you call Dell, you call whoever you can call. No one knows how to help you. At 8:01 in the morning, he calls you. He says, what happened? The email didn't work. He goes, what do you mean the email didn't work? I gave you the email. He goes, yeah, it didn't work. What do you have? What's the email that you send it to? I send it to abc@yaron.com. He goes, yeah, you missed it. You missed the dot in .com. He goes, why? You're making a big deal out of the dot. I made the whole thing. abc@yaron.com. The 1 dot. He goes, yeah, the 1 dot's the whole thing. Without the dot, the email's worthless. Without Shabbat, the mitzvot are worthless. That's the dot and .com. You understand? I didn't know this. Now, all of these rabbis that came to my office to collect for the yeshiva, for the camp, for the kollel, for the Hanukkah party, and the pizza party, and in this party and that party, which none of them I had time to actually attend, but I'd fund it. All of them didn't tell me this. At some point during the career, I decided to invest some money into a Sefer Torah. And the reason why is because I had money, and I heard that the Sefer Torah is a big mitzvah. Easy mitzvah for me. I have the money. Get the Sefer Torah. So we got the Sefer Torah. The problem is when the Sefer Torah came, it's online, you can see the movie. They made a whole film of it, of the Sefer Torah coming. It was in a newspaper. And they wrote a nice story about it. Beautiful, amazing thing. It's the most beautiful thing I ever seen. Sefer Torah took a year to write in Jerusalem. The Sofer, the scribe of the Sefer Torah, was a very, very holy man, but he didn't know me. All he knew was that I wanted to get the best possible Sefer Torah. The price was irrelevant. Good customer. It took a year to write it. Once the Sefer Torah arrived, they told me, hey, we're going to have a party. I said, for what? They said, for the Sefer Torah. I said, yeah, but it's already here. I said, yeah. I said, okay, so enjoy. He's like, no, you have to come. I'm like, I'm working. He's like, no, but you have to come. I'm like, do you know how much money I'm going to lose if I come to this party? I don't have time for parties. It's $3,000 an hour. I said, yeah, but you're Sefer Torah. I didn't get it. I said, okay, fine, I'll come to this party. I came to the party. I saw the Sefer Torah. It was the most amazing thing in the world. They celebrated. They danced. They jumped with the Sefer Torah. It's beautiful. There was only one problem. One problem. I paid for the Sefer Torah. The Sefer Torah arrived. The scribe, amazing. The rabbi of the Keilah, even more amazing. Everything was great. There's one small problem with the Sefer Torah. I didn't read it. So I kissed it, but I didn't know what it said. I heard that there was some guy named Moshe Rabbeinu when I was a kid. I heard there was Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. I heard there's a day in the week called Shabbat. I heard that there's some concept called kosher. But the details, I didn't know. So I said, I have a Sefer Torah. I thought it was a tzaddik. Donated a bunch of money. Everyone's happy. Apparently they're calling me a very, very righteous person for some reason because I gave some money. So I thought, oh, it's a get out of jail free card. So I thought I was a tzaddik. So for the next few years, when people were coming to my office, no one told me that I need to read the Sefer Torah and actually do what it says. I thought just giving money was, that's all I needed to do. I knew that there's more I can do. I wasn't an idiot. But I thought it's for like elective. You know, you go to school and there's like what you have to take and then what you like can take if you want. Like if you want to be like extra, you want to be better. You know, there's the hours you have to work. But then if you want to work overtime because you want to take a vacation once a year, I thought it's like that. And all of these rabbis that came never told me it's not an elective. They never told me that Shabbat is the dot and .com. They never told me that the tzedakah, when it says tzedakah tetzil mimavet, tzedakah will save you from death, it doesn't mean it'll save you for eternity. It just means it's going to buy you more time to do tshuva. So if you gave tzedakah, it's just buying you more time. No one gets Gan Eden purely for tzedakah after not keeping the rest of the mitzvot. It's not a get out of jail free card. So for anyone that donates a bunch of money once a year, because once a year they come to Beit Knesset, like I used to, and they donate $15,000 for some aliyah, they don't even know what it means. And they think, oh, this is great, I'm a tzaddik. They put my name on the Beit Knesset. The name stays on the Beit Knesset, but nothing else happens that's any good. In Shamayim, it's not enough. So now, none of these rabbis told me this. All they told me is they needed money, I had it, I'd give them. Now there's also another problem. They didn't tell me about this either. That the fact that I was married to a non-Jew wasn't exactly good. Wasn't exactly good in Hashem's eyes. And the reason why is because even before we got the Torah, Hashem told Avraham Avinu, you see your helper Eliezer? Eliezer was one of the most righteous men that ever lived. And he got to Gan Eden, he got to heaven alive. He never died. He's one of 10 people that get to Gan Eden alive. We only hope to get there dead. He got there alive. Hopefully we get there dead. He's there alive. But Hashem said to Avraham Avinu, Eliezer, you can't have your son, Yitzchak, marry his daughters. Even though he's holy of holies. Even though he's Kodesh Kodeshim, even though he's going to get to Gan Eden alive, you can't have his daughters marry your son. Why? He's from Canaan. He's from a different nation. Not allowed. It's a big deal, Shemaim. So I said, listen, I'm not really following Judaism. I can't make somebody else follow it. So was it my fault that the woman that I love happens to not have been born to a mother that's Jewish? It's not our fault. If she wants to be Jewish, she'll be Jewish. I can't tell her to be Jewish. I didn't believe being a hypocrite. Can't tell you to do something I'm not doing. I'm only Jewish because my mom was born a certain way. Not because I decided to be Jewish. So we got married. We started a company. We were making money. Everything was wonderful. My hobby was playing high-stakes poker with the best players in the world. All the people you see on TV were sitting on the same table as me. I was the guy that when I showed up to the casino, there's 500-600 people in the room. They stop what they're doing. They start a table for me. Why? I'm the guy with the money. The good news is they were all excited to play with me because they thought I was the fish. The bad news is I was also a shark too. So I won some money. I knew a little bit of math, and I also didn't care about money, so it was very difficult to beat me. It's like the terrorists. It's very difficult to beat terrorists because they don't care about dying. So I played in the World Series of Poker and all these different tournaments, and I lived the high life. And everything seemed wonderful. November 18, 2006, just came back from a month-long vacation to Las Vegas. Made plenty of money. It was great in the business. was great in everything. I thought I was a tzaddik because they told me I was okay as long as I keep giving money. So I decided I was going to have an elective surgery for a little bit of pain that I had. The pain was called hemorrhoids. Don't worry, 2 out of 3 people have it. This annoyed me once, maybe twice a year. And it was annoying enough for me to go to the doctor and say, no, is this going to go away or like by itself? Or is it going to stay around? I said, well, listen, if you want, you can have a surgery. It's a very simple surgery. You go into the surgery. It's called an elective surgery. Elective meaning you don't have to have it. You come in the morning. We do the surgery while you're asleep. You don't feel anything. You wake up. It's a little uncomfortable, which, by the way, in doctor words, that means a lot of pain. Uncomfortable means pain. Pressure means pain. Pressure means pain. Uncomfortable means pain. The difference is pressure is a lot of pain. Uncomfortable is like, it's painful. But if they say pain, you're not going to come back. They said, listen, you can have this surgery. A couple of hours, you wake up. You go home, you relax. You're a little uncomfortable for a couple of days. No big deal. You go back to work. I said, okay, how long am I out of work? He's like, listen, you come, you have the surgery on a Wednesday, you're back to work on Monday, no later. I said, listen, it's $3,000 an hour. I said, okay, no problem. I'll have a vacation for a few days. I could afford it. Let's have the surgery. My clock ran out. Everything changed. You know, when you were a kid, you go to the beach. You go on the beach, sometimes you see little kids playing in the sand. One time there was this little kid playing in the sand with his brothers and sisters. And they were all playing in the sand. He thought it was foolish. Why? Because they build the sand, they build the castle, they build the castle. The wind comes, castle falls. Water comes, castle falls. So he said, what am I going to do? It's a waste of time. So what did he start doing? He started waving to the boat. Started waving to the big boat. So an adult saw him. He goes, stop, no. What are you waving to the boat? You think he can see you? It's a huge boat. You can't see. He goes, no, you can see me. He goes, stop waving to the boat, little kid. Go play with sand. He goes, I'm not playing with the sand. I'm waving to the boat. I'm waving to the boat. I'm waving to the boat. He's waving to the boat. He's excited about this boat. He goes, stop waving to the boat. You look ridiculous. He goes, I'm waiting to the boat. He's going to say hi back to me. He goes, he's not going to say hi back to you. He says, he's going to say hi back to me. He goes, why do you think he's going to say hi back to you? Because he's my father. He goes, oh, if he's your father, he's probably looking for you. If he's your father, he's probably looking for you. My father was looking for me. Father in heaven was looking for me. The problem was I was playing with the sand. I wasn't waving. I was playing with the material that kept building and destroying and didn't really mean much. The boat was passing and I was running out of time. When Abba was looking, I wasn't waving. When Hashem Yitbarach was looking, I wasn't waving. I was busy with the sand. So November 18, 2006, I woke up out of the surgery screaming and yelling my lungs out because the pain medicine was not working and something went wrong with the surgery. The surgeons didn't understand what happened. Everything started failing. I'm asking them to kill me. My wife and my mom won't listen, and neither will the doctors. But all we can do is continue enduring the pain and scream and yell as if they took a huge blade like commando, and they're cutting my body up over and over again while connecting the knife to electricity. That's what it felt like. Now, they started giving me morphine. Now, since I liked my brain, I never took drugs. So I never tried weed, I never tried hashish, never tried cocaine, never did anything. I liked my brain, so I figured let's keep it intact. They showed me on TV, this is your brain on drugs, your brain on drugs, this is your brain after drug. I said, okay, let's listen to the commercial. They sold me. So I never tried drugs. What I didn't know is that my body doesn't accept most drugs. So they kept giving me morphine, but my body was rejecting it. It just didn't work. And they asked my wife if I'm a drug addict. She said, no, he doesn't do drugs. He's actually against them. He sent a few of his friends to rehab. He's very much against drugs. He goes, okay, well, why doesn't he accept the drugs? She goes, you're the doctor. They kept giving me drugs. They kept giving me morphine, and eventually they had to stop. They said, ma'am, we gave him the most amount of morphine legally allowed, which is enough to kill a large horse and a few of his riders. No human should be able to handle that much, but that's the most we're allowed to give him. Pray that it works. It worked. At least I thought. I calmed down. I thought, oh, that's what Gehenom looks like. And they told me, oh, sir, everything is fine. There was just a little bit of a glitch, but you can go home. After all, it's only an elective surgery. I said, okay, thank you very much. It was fun to be here. I'm going home. On the way home, we picked up shawarma. Had the shawarma sandwich. I told everyone that, thank you for coming. I'm going to sleep. And I thought that the show would end. I woke up approximately 45 minutes later and realized that the show just began. Because the same pain that I had in the hospital came back, only this time it didn't stop for 62 days. So for the next 62 days, there was never more than 15 minutes of no pain. I had to take all types of painkillers, more than they would be able to even subscribe me. Had some of my assistants go buy from their friends. I had some doctors give me extra. Anything and everything that could work. The problem is that it wasn't working. All that was happening is that my body started failing. So I started peeing blood, started bleeding from my eyes, getting infections in my ears. And little by little, the doctor said, I'm sorry, ma'am, he's dying. But we don't know why. So imagine screaming and yelling for 62 days. You can't sleep for more than 15 minutes. And eventually, after a while, when you don't sleep for a long time, since I'm not David HaMelech, what ends up happening, you start hallucinating. You start dying. Your body starts failing. And that's what happened. After a couple of months, HaShem had mercy on me. It was enough of Gehenom for a little while. And the pain started subsiding. So instead of taking 60 or 70 painkillers a day, I was down to maybe 20. It was manageable. For me, it was almost like Gan Eden. For most people, it was Gehenom. When I asked my rabbi in the beginning, can you teach me about Gehenom? I want to know about Gehenom. I'm one of those people. I like to know the real story. Gan Eden sounds good, but I'm interested in Gehenom. What happens there? Is it real? He says, yeah, it's real. He says, it's like really bad? It's horrible. It's like, can you teach me about Gehenom? He goes, no. I said, why not? He says, because you think you went through Gehenom and I don't want to disappoint you. He says, it's much worse. So now, after 2 months, I'm starting to get back to myself. And eventually I start going back to work. My body's not the same anymore. So for example, for me to walk from here to the door, for an average person would take maybe 2 to 3 seconds. For me, it would take me about 40 minutes. So imagine a 20-something-year-old kid with all the money in the world, living on the 35th floor in Wall Street, with a 400-square-foot balcony, is walking slower than the 93-year-old man. And every step is ow, ow, oh, ow, oh, ow, ow, ow. All day, every day. Now I thought this is eventually going to go away. You know, like a headache. 9 months later, I feel a pain in my leg. I thought maybe I pulled a muscle. Slept on the wrong side instead of the wrong. I never actually understood what the right side or the wrong side of the bed is, but somehow I thought I slept on the wrong side. I woke up with a pain in my leg. Later that afternoon, I wasn't able to walk. By the next morning, I was in an emergency room. They said, sir, you have an infection between the muscle of your leg to the muscle of the, the rectal area. Has absolutely nothing to do with the surgery, because again, the surgery is exterior. But the infection is big enough that if you would have waited probably another hour and a half to 2 hours, it would have blown up, went into your bloodstream, and you would have died instantly. So we have to have an emergency surgery. Good night. I go to sleep. I wake up from the surgery, connected to all types of morphine, and I stay in the intensive care unit next to the dying people for the next 10 days. After that, eventually they release me. The second surgery is worse than the first. Now I thought this is going to be over. 6 months later, I get another infection. It's called an abscess. Another surgery, another hospital visit. They're starting to know me by first name. Three months later, another surgery, another hospital visit. Eventually it gets to the point where it's every month. And for the next 7 years, I'm fighting for my life. Now, in that 7 years, remember, there was many, many people in my life when times were good. I had a lot of friends. Something happens when you have money. Everyone wants to be your friend for some reason. So I had a lot of friends. Some of them were religious people. Some of them were not religious people. Some people continued showing up. Some people didn't really show up to say hello. They usually showed up to take something. So, how about? And what ended up happening is that at the very same time that I had the surgery, in November of 2006, is also the same time that I started losing money. But if making $20 million was a miracle, to go from nothing, to go from $1 a day that's borrowed to millions of dollars, if that was a miracle, losing it was a bigger miracle. I lost it much faster, and I didn't lose it I didn't lose it in some unusual way. I didn't lose it because I bet it all on, I don't know, oranges, and they all went bad. Everything and anything I touched used to turn to gold.
Remember about your company.
My personal expertise is in the investment world, and we've done extremely well over these last 12 years. And I generally do better in bad times than I do in good times. And the reason why is because I'm able to evaluate companies very well as far as understand what their true value is in comparison to what their stock value is. And bad times present good opportunities. You know, so I don't buy things based on a trend. I don't buy things based on what the TV is saying. I buy things based on a value. If times are bad, then that creates opportunities because people make mistakes. And sometimes they make irrational decisions, which will make something that may be worth one, you know, only equal 20 cents.
Right.
You know, or something that's worth 100 only worth $20.
Right, because they're panicking.
Right. And
now, all the gold that I had turned to dust. It didn't matter what it was. If it was a company, if it was a deal, if it was a loan, if it was anything. Hashem says to the prophet, Liya kesef Liya za'av, neum Hashem tzevaot. Mine is the money, mine is the gold, says Hashem, master of legions. It's all mine. I just lent it to you so you could do something good with it. You didn't do it. You didn't do it. You thought that giving some tzedakah here and there to some people that need it is going to be a get-out-of-jail-free card. It's not. It's not a get-out-of-jail-free card. Now, since you didn't listen with the few tests that I gave you, I have to wake you up in a different way. And the reason why is because we are now at the end of days. According to the sages, in our Gemara, we are now at a time where it's the end of times. In the Gemara Masechet Sotah, page 49, it talks about there's going to be different signs that are going to happen before the Mashiach arrives. Now we've been hearing about this Mashiach for 2,000 years. He's late. But he's Jewish, so he has to be late. But now, they said you're going to have signs. You're going to have something happen. It's going to indicate that he's here. In the end of the Gemara, it gives you the signs. We did a shiur about a year ago in New York, talking about all the signs. The interesting part is today when you read all those signs, it's like reading the newspaper. Everything and anything that they said was going to happen 2,000 years ago happened over the last few decades. So all the signs we've been waiting for, we have. Even the red cow we've been waiting for a couple of thousand years for, we have 2 of them. 2,000 years there was no red cows, now we have 2, just in case the first one doesn't want to do it. The only sign we're missing is the Mashiach himself. That's it. Now the sages also read from the prophets, Prophet Zechariah, chapter 14, and also Ezekiel. And they say there's going to be a little bit of an interesting time before the end of days. Everyone's going to want to fight. There's going to be some war called Gog uMagog. Now you don't have to follow the news on a daily basis to know that it's happening. A little over a year ago, Russia decided that they want to fight ISIS. So they sent a submarine carrying the most amount of nuclear weapons in the world. We don't even know how many. Now ISIS is a bunch of gangsters that decide that beheading people is fun in the name of their God. The reality of it is, you don't need an atomic bomb for ISIS. One plane could really destroy all of them if he's just persistent enough. But Russia said they're bringing a couple of 100 atomic bombs to fight ISIS. If anyone believes they're really fighting ISIS, you need to go back to school again. It's not for fight ISIS.
As we all know, the world has changed. If you ask your parents, your grandparents, and you ask them, how was the world when you were a kid, when you were my age? You'll never hear, no, it's the same thing. It doesn't exist. Why? Because we find ourselves, according to the Torah, in the time that we call the end of time. Anyone that watches the news for 5 minutes can realize the Third World War already started. It's just quiet. Before Russia sent all of their planes and helicopters and jeeps and tanks, they sent a ship with 200 atomic bombs to Syria. Accordingly, they're saying that it's to fight ISIS. I don't know why you need even 1 atomic bomb for ISIS. So whoever buys that story is a fool. If that wasn't enough, since that was September of last year, if the 200 atomic bombs were already used up, we need some more. So about 2 months ago, they sent a submarine, that's the biggest submarine in the world, with more atomic bombs than the original ship. We just don't know how many. This is also for ISIS. So we realize that this is not for ISIS. You don't need to be Einstein. You see that the United States is heating up every day. Everyone wants to fight. Israel is becoming the most hated country in the world on a regular basis. It's actually becoming popular to be anti-Semitic. A recent study of just a couple of years ago said that over 40% of Americans consider themselves anti-Semitic. This is our allies. Missiles are being shot at us in Israel on a regular basis. Jews are being beat up all over the world, some of them being killed, HaShem Erachem. I think there was a few incidents in Brooklyn as well recently. The world is not the same. The world's heating up. According to the Nevuot, according to the prophecies, you can find all over the Gemara, all over the book of Ezekiel, Zechariah, and also even the Chamisha Chobshei Torah. We have every single sign we need for the end of times, except one, the Mashiach himself.
כותבים לך בעיתונות, כותבים לך בכל מקום, ואתה חושב, הנה עושים, אנחנו נמצאים במצב קשה, ואם אני אגיד לכם את האמת, מה יהיה בעתיד? אני אגיד לכם את האמת. הם חושבים שיהיה שלום, חושבים שיהיה שקט יום אחד, טיפשים גמורים, שעל זה נאמר בפרשת האזינו לנו היום, עם נבל ולא חכם. דור עיקש של דולדות, אנשים תגמילותות. הלו אביך קמך, תדעי מה יהיה, רחמן אצלן. קוריה תגיע כאן, רחמן אצלן. שמע ציונותים, וכל מי ששם לב מה שמתרחש בקוריאה היום, זה בשבילנו, האטומים.
If you go to the last page of the Gemara, Masechet Sotah, page 49, it says, these are the things that are going to happen at the end of times before the Mashiach comes. You listen to it and it's like reading the newspaper, the daily news. Everything they said is going to happen, which was unheard of in those times, is happening as we speak.
קשה מאוד אם לא נחזור בתשובה. תבינו, תדעו שזה יותר מהשואה.
A couple of days ago we got news that the United States sent either the largest or one of the largest aircraft carriers to the coast of Israel and Haifa to fight ISIS. The biggest ship with the most amount of weapons and atomic bombs arrived in Israel to fight ISIS. This ISIS is really getting the best of everyone. North Korea would press the button if they had the atomic bomb right now, without even target. They just press it. You know how you press the vending machine when it doesn't work? Go, go, ready, go, ready, go, go, go. For where is it going? Just go. Iran is pressing the button, they just don't have anything. But they have the button. The world wants to fight. And the sages say that in the end of times, initially they're all going to fight each other. But then they're going to say, you know what? It's really all the fault of the Jews. It's really all their fault. What is it all about? We wanted to make Jerusalem just a separate entity, not part of Israel, even though it's in their history books for over 3,000 years. Let's just make it a separate land. They refused to do it. It's all their fault. So Ishmael and Esav, the Arabs and the Christians and Catholics decide it's all the Jews' fault. Let's all attack them. 7.5 billion people attack a country with less than 20 million. If you gather all the Jews from all over the world, not just Israel. Now, if you think about it, they don't need weapons. If you have 7.5 billion people, better yet, if you have 1 billion people, not 7, 1 billion, half the Muslim population. 1 billion people spit, and Israel drowns. Do you think the Iron Dome everyone's so heavily invested in relying in is going to help us? Do you think the Zionist mentality is going to help us? Do you think the secular government that hates HaShem is going to help us? Or maybe it's the terrorist members in Congress of Israel. Maybe they're going to help us. In the end of the Gemara Masechet Sotah, it says at the end of times we will have nothing to rely on other than Avinu Shebashamayim, our Father in heaven. You don't need to turn the news on anymore. It's happening. How much time we have, I don't know. Could be a week, could be a month, could be a year, 5 years, I have no idea. All I know, it's there. It's happening. Question is whether we're going to be saved when this Mashiach arrives. Everyone's always excited. They sing Mashiach, Mashiach, Mashiach. But if you read the prayer in Tehillim, it says, Uba leTzion Goel leshaveh pesha beYaakov. The Goel, the Mashiach, who is he coming for? Who is he going to save? The ones who used to be Poshrim. The ones who used to be Mechalei Shabbat. The ones who used to be violators of the Torah. The ones that did tshuva, I'm going to save them. Those that did tshuva, coming for them. Them I'm going to save. They have nothing to worry about. You did tshuva, you have nothing to worry about. No ISIS, no shmeisis, no nothing. Doesn't matter where you are even in the world. It doesn't matter. Did tshuva, you have nothing to worry about. You didn't do tshuva, you should pray, you should do Tehillim, that he doesn't come. You know, people read Tehillim, come, Mashiach, come, Mashiach. If you didn't do tshuva, you should pray he doesn't come. Because after he comes, there's no more tshuva. After Mashiach comes, there's no more conversion. Clock's over. Like I thought mine was in November 18th of 2006. Now this Mashiach is a little different than me. The way he's different is that when he talks, it's a little different outcome. It's not funny. So, the prophet Isaiah says there's a few things we need to know about this Mashiach. Ruach da'at ve'irat Hashem ve'aricho be'irat Adonai ve'lo lemar'e einav yishpot ve'lo lishma oznav yochiach. First, he's telling us he's going to be able to smell our yirat shamayim, our fear of heaven. Why does he want to smell our yirat shamayim? You have yirat shamayim, you're not going to sin. You're afraid of God, you're not going to sin. Why? God said so. When God gave us the 10 commandments, first he spoke himself the first 2 commandments. After the first commandment, everyone died. The entire nation, millions and millions of people died. Why? They couldn't handle the kedusha of his voice, the magnitude of his voice. They died. HaShem revived the dead. He said the second commandment. They died again. He revived the dead the second time. They said, Moshe, you go talk to him. Na'aseh v'nishma. We'll do, and then we'll hear what he actually said. Because if he continues to talk, we're all going to die. How do we know we're going to die? We died twice. We can't handle his voice. It's too much. So Moshe Rabbeinu says, don't worry. He's only scaring you so you don't sin. Because the only way you don't sin is if you're scared of God. So the first thing the Mashiach is going to look for is if you're scared of God. Do you have yirat shamayim? Do you ask yourself, what does God think about what I'm about to do before you do it? If you do, you have the beginning of yirat shamayim. So the first thing this Mashiach is going to look for is if you have this yirat shamayim. Do I wear the short dress or the long one? Do I wear the long sleeve or the t-shirt? In this week's Parashat Balak, we learned something interesting at the end of the parasha. At the end of the parasha, we hear that Hashem got so upset that he decided to destroy the nation without warning. Why did he decide to destroy the entire nation without warning? We got a warning about idolatry. We got a warning about all our complaints. We got a warning before the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash. We got a warning countless times throughout history before Hashem punished us, except this parasha. In this parasha, Hashem says, enough's enough. I'm going to destroy all of them. And Baruch Hashem, Pinchas, Ben Elazar, in next week's parasha, you'll hear more about it, saved the day. Why did Hashem get so upset that he said enough's enough? It's worse than idolatry. It's worse than Chet HaEgel. You had an idol in Mount Sinai. We just got the Torah, we have an idol. You think it can't get worse than this. He goes, no, this just got worse. Why? You went with immodest women, that's not Jewish. Not only the immodest, but also not Jewish. It's not worth to have you. Today, unfortunately, it's acceptable behavior. So Hashem says, time's up. So when this Mashiach comes, he's not going to say, oh, I smell you don't have yirat shamayim. The very next verse says, Uberuach sfatav yamit rasha. With the words that come out of his mouth, he will destroy the rasha. Who is the rasha? The one that doesn't have yirat shamayim. The one that still doesn't want to be modest. The one that still doesn't want to keep Shabbat. The one that still doesn't want to do tshuva. Not ready. I want to make money first. Then I'll do tshuva. I want to get married first. Then I'll do tshuva. I want to get really, really old. And then I'll do tshuva when I don't have any friends that want me to go to the clubs anymore. I want to be a millionaire. And then I'll do tshuva. All the different excuses in the world that we have before we do tshuva. I had more of those excuses than anybody else in the world. Why? Hey, you have money, you have a lot of stuff to do. So now I thought that this story was going to end, but over the next 7 years I became an experiment for doctors. I went to over 50 different doctors, all types of medicine, traditional medicine, non-traditional medicine, even got to a point where I legitimately became an experiment in a science project, or a science experiment. They started injecting ozone into my veins to see maybe they could clean my blood. It feels somewhat like chemotherapy. Never had chemotherapy, but the way that people that I know that had chemotherapy tell me they felt, I felt. So, and for the next 7 years, the money kept disappearing. Some of these friends I told you about became enemies. They started stealing. They started taking everything they possibly could because there's no one to defend the castle. And little by little, everything was disappearing. Eventually, I got to a point where I wanted to commit suicide. You get to that point after you have really pain 24 hours a day. The money doesn't mean much anymore. And even the money you used to have, you don't have anymore. It was a nightmare. So I got to my kits. I got to my end, my wit's end. And I started planning. And one day, I said, you know what, let me be nice to my mom because I'm probably going to leave this world soon. Let me be nice to my wife because she's the greatest person on earth. Jew or non-Jew didn't make a difference to me. She was the only one that stuck around. She's the only one that was loyal. She's the only one that dedicated her life to make me happy. I asked her every day why she didn't leave. She said, where will I go? I said, no, to continue with your life. You're young, you're beautiful. We'll give you all the money in the world. She goes, I don't want the money. What am I going to do with the money? I said, I don't buy stuff. She goes, I don't want stuff. I want you. I said, why? I'm sick. She goes, no, you're not. You're you. It didn't matter to her. I thought she just went crazy. So, I felt bad, but I said, I can't continue. If she's not going to leave, I'm going to leave. So I started planning. What am I going to do? Hanging is kind of not for me. Jumping, I'm kind of scared of heights. I lived on the 35th floor, but I never looked down. I started thinking. I got to the end. You know, before you do something stupid, you have to be stupid. I got to that point. But HaShem is not going to give you a test you can't handle. And the reason why is because He loves you. A mom will never tell her daughter, honey, can you pick up the car for me? Just pick it up with one hand. Why is she not going to tell her pick up the car with one hand? Because she knows she can't. So why is she going to give her a test that she knows she's going to fail? If you love somebody, you don't do it. So if the mother here, of flesh and blood, knows that, the father up there knows too. So, I started being nicer to everyone for the next few hours, thinking that, what am I going to do? I'm sitting in my office, starting to plan. My mom, on the other hand, is crying her eyes out, dialing this little black book full of different rabbis' phone numbers that apparently every Jewish mother has. I don't know how they get all these phone numbers, but they have these phone numbers of every rabbi that lives. And she starts calling the phone numbers in Israel, in America, in every country that's possible. But today, no one picks up. Everyone's busy. For almost 2 hours, she's calling different rabbis and no one picks up. Eventually, a woman picks up and she asks for a certain rabbi's name. She says, Rabbi so-and-so there. He says, I'm sorry, ma'am, in Hebrew, because it was in Israel, but you called the wrong phone number. So imagine you're dialing, crying your eyes out for 2 hours, no one picks up. Eventually a woman picks up and it's the wrong phone number in a different country. So my mom, what does she do? Naturally, what does a Jewish woman do? She starts crying to this strange woman. V'yishtabach shemo la'ad. That's when HaShem comes in. And the woman on the other side of the phone says, Doris? She says my mom's name. And my mom says, who are you? She's shocked how this strange woman in a different country just knows her name. And not only knows her name, but knows her voice. What are the chances? Sometimes we have kids calling us, or cousins, or aunts, or uncles, and even parents, we don't know their voice. A strange woman in a different country knows my mom's voice. Who are you? How do you know my name? She goes, well, I'm your niece. And that's why I know your name. Penina. She goes, Penina, how did I get to you? I don't even have your phone number. We've never spoken on the phone ever. She says, I don't know how you got to me. But if you got to me, then HaShem has a reason. And Penina happens to be in the most religious family out of all of our families. And she says, why are you crying? She says, well, my son is dying. She says, and I'm trying to get to a big rabbi, but nobody is picking up. She goes, why don't you talk to Rabbi Vadia? She goes, well, I don't have access to Rabbi Vadia. She goes, yeah, but you could call my brother, Rabbi Ephraim. He lives next door to him. He's Talmid of his. Talmid Chacham. He's young, but he's Talmid Chacham. Wrote a few books already, very young age. Lives close to him. You call him. She goes, he will talk to me? He goes, of course. Your Aunt Doris from America. So she calls Rabbi Ephraim, and Rabbi Ephraim is not there because he's in Kollel, he's studying, but his wife answers, and she says, I'll call you back, and she calls her back. And Rabbi Ephraim talks to my mom, and she's crying her eyes out, and now, Rabbi Ephraim and I have never met. I actually didn't know he existed. And he didn't know I existed, or at least that's what I thought. Now, we've never spoken, but Rabbi Ephraim is very smart, so he said, a few minutes into her crying, he says, does he speak Hebrew? He says, yeah, he speaks a little Hebrew. She goes, oh, can I talk to him directly? He says, no, he's not going to talk to you. He doesn't talk to anybody, barely talks to the family. And at that very moment that she said, he's not going to talk to you, I decided to be nice to my mother and call her for the first time in maybe a year. And my mom answers the phone, and she's hysterical, crying, and she says, talk to him, talk to him. And I have obviously no idea what she's talking about. I said, to who? And why is he making you cry? She goes, to Ephraim. I said, who is this Ephraim בכלל?
השאלה היא בעצם שאלה ידועה, למה באנו לעולם? כל בן אדם שלא יודע את התשובה לשאלה הזאת, יש מצב שהוא מפספס את חייו עלי אדמות. בן אדם אוכל, שותה, יושן, קם, עובד, מקבל משכורת, מתווכח, רב, חוזר הביתה, אוכל, שותה, נהנה, עושה דברים, חוזר, וכן הלאה וכן הלאה. למה באנו לעולם בצורה של בני אדם? מה אנחנו שונים מבעלי החיים? באיזה זכות יש לנו להרוג את בעלי החיים ולאכול אותם? חשבתם על זה? זה באמת הרבה ארגון של טבעונים. אומרים, מה אתה בא? רוצח פרות. אני רוצה להפליג עוד יותר. על פי המדענים, הם גילו תחקיר שיש רגשות גם בפירות וירקות. אז כשאתה חותך עגבנייה, אתה גם רוצח את העגבנייה. יש רגשות, אפשר למדוד את זה ולבדוק את זה. אז אם נלך עוד יותר, אז אל תאכל פירות, אל תאכל ירקות, אל תאכל דגים, אל תאכל בעלי חיים, אל תאכל כלום. באיזה זכות יש לנו, כביכול, להתנהל ולהנחיל לכל העולם, שזה עולם הדומם, הצומח והחי, את השלטון שלנו עליו? מכיוון שאנחנו יותר חכמים, מכיוון שהם לא יכולים לדבר ואנחנו כן, מה עושה אותנו בתור בני אדם מיוחדים יותר משאר בעלי החיים? אם אדם יחשוב על הדבר הזה ולא יהיה לו תשובות, אז המצב שלו קשה מאוד. אם אתה לא יודע למה באת לעולם, מה אתה שונה מבהמה? הרי בפועל בהמה נהנית יותר. מה רע אם האדם היה נולד בתור חתול, סיאם של איזה עשיר? הוא נהנה, מקבל כל מה שהוא רק רוצה. למה מישהו עשה אותך בתור בן אדם? האם יש הבדל בינך לבין בעל חיים? דבר נוסף, אם אין תכלית לעולם, למה מצטערים ובוכים בשעה שבן אדם נפטר? בן אדם מת, קוברים אותו, אנשים בוכים. מה אתה בוכה? נגמר. למה כשאדם הורג נמלה הוא לא בוכה? מה אתה שונה מכל אדם? מה אתה שונה מכל דבר אחר בעולם? ואדם שהוא יהודי הוא צריך לשאול למה אני נולדתי יהודי. למה אני נולדתי יהודי שאחוזי האנטישמיות כל כך גוברים בעולם? למה כל כך שונאים אותנו? למה לא נולדתי איזה מקסיקני? 200 מיליון מקסיקנים, מיליארד סינים, יפנים, יש כל כך הרבה אנשים בעולם, למה לא נולדתי כמוהם? מי כיוון אותי שאני אוולד לכאן? אדם שאין לו תשובות לשאלות האלה, המצב שלו קשה, המצב שלו מסוכן. הוא יעבור את כל החיים בעצם בלי יחס לחיים. כי בן אדם שחושב שהחיים הם רק בשביל לאכול ולשתות וליהנות, ושהחיים אין להם ערך עליון, אז הוא לא מתייחס לחיים בתור חיים. הוא מתייחס לחיים בתור משהו אמצעי שעושים קצת, אז בשעה שמגיע לו קצת קשיים בחיים, הוא מתאבד. בשעה שמגיע לו קצת בעיות, הוא בורח מהמציאות, הוא לא מצליח לתפקד, חרב עליו עולמו. אבל אם בן אדם יש לו תשובות לשאלות האלה, אם אתם תרצו תשובות לשאלות האלה, בואו תעקבו, תשמעו שיעורי תורה, דברי תורה, ותבינו מה בעצם התכלית של העולם, מה אנחנו שונים מכל החי והצומח, באיזה זכות יש לנו לשלוט עליהם ולהנהיג את העולם. אם אתם מעוניינים, בואו תצטרפו לשיעורים, תכירו את היהדות הפנימית, את האור האלוקי בתורת HaShem ובמצוות ובמכלול הגלובלי של החיים האמיתיים על פי התורה.
So this is Rabbi Ephraim calling me, he's your cousin, he's your this, he's your that. I'm like, listen, if you stop crying, I'll talk to anybody. Just stop crying. It's the worst thing in the world is to hear somebody crying, especially if it's your mom. So she gets on the other line. She tells Rabbi Ephraim to call me. Rabbi Ephraim calls me. How are you? How are you? We start talking. I tell him a problem. He says, oh, yeah, that's the same problem that he mentions a character in the Torah had, and he gives me a verse and a page number of where it happened off the top of his head. I said, oh, this is very interesting. This guy knows page numbers. Does he have the book in front of him? How does he know? So I ask another question. He says, oh, what a great question. This is the same question that Rabbi so-and-so asked 823 years ago in this book on this page. And it says, da-da-da-da-da-da. So he not only knows the name of the book and who wrote the book, but the year that it was written and exactly what it says. I said, no, this is no. He has both books in front of him. So I just keep asking questions. And he tells me my favorite story still to this day from the Torah, the story of Yudah and Tamar. It took me a few years to understand why he told me the story. And he answers my questions, and we have a conversation for an hour and 40 minutes. And for the next hour and 40 minutes, I feel like I don't have any problems anymore. I run to my wife, and I say, he knows. And she says, what does he know, and who is he? I said, it's Rabbi Ephraim. He says, what does he know? He says, he knows the secret. I said, what are you talking about? I said, he knows the secret to the world. He knows how everything works. She goes, keep talking to him. I said, I can't wait till he calls me again. So the next week at exactly the same time, Thursday at 4 o'clock, he calls me, and this time we talk for 3 hours. 3 hours I ask him questions, and he gives me a rabbi's name, a book name, the year it was written, the verse, the page, on the spot. And it just continues. So I just keep asking him questions. I didn't even know I had that many questions. I ask him about dinosaurs, I ask him about scientific proofs, I ask him about business, I ask him about everything. If you had a question, I probably asked it. Sometimes it was because it was interesting to know what the answer is. Sometimes I just want to know if he knows it. The next week he calls me a Thursday at 4 o'clock, and this time we talk for 5 hours. The next Thursday he calls me at 4 o'clock, and we talk for 7 hours. And from that day on, every single Thursday, Baruch HaShem, we talk for an average of 6 to 7 hours straight. I ask questions, he gives me answers. And now, the whole week doesn't matter anymore. All I wait for is Thursday, 4 o'clock. Because at Thursday at 4 o'clock, I don't accept business calls, I don't accept doctors, I don't accept anything. All I accept is Rabbi Ephraim's phone call. And we continue this every single Thursday, and little by little, I start understanding I have a problem. I have a lot of problems. Money is the least of my problems. And so is the health. I have to start fixing myself. So now everything I learn, I start teaching my wife. She is more excited about Rabbi Ephraim than I am. And the reason why is because for whatever strange reason or another, at least I didn't know at the time, she's always wanted me to be a religious Jew. She grew up as a religious Christian, and she wanted me to be a religious Jew. Doesn't make sense to you guys, but it made sense to us. So now, I'm learning stuff, and after the shiur with him, I'm teaching her everything I learned, and we're both enlightened. Eventually, he tells me, listen, I think it's time for you to keep Shabbat. It's a big deal, it's this, it's that. It's Shabbat, that's usually when I go to the casino. I says, yeah, can't do that. It's like, yeah, but that's usually when I have business meetings. I can't have them during the week, so I do it on the weekend. He doesn't answer. I said, yeah, but, Shabbat is, it's usually a time I rest. It's usually the time I go here. And I start listening to my self-talk. And I remember this day, I was talking in the balcony, and I was starting to make up every single excuse in the book of why Shabbat is not for me. And after about 2 to 3 minutes of talking of why Shabbat is so difficult, I say, wow, Rabbi Ephraim, I never knew how much BS I'm full of. I'll keep Shabbat. It's all nonsense. I could do it all on Sunday. Whatever it is that I want to do. So we decided that we're going to keep the first Shabbat. He didn't say you have to keep Shabbat forever. He just said keep the first Shabbat. Keep Shabbat. So we kept Shabbat. How do you keep Shabbat on the 35th floor in New York? You make food, and you don't leave the house. And that's what we did. We got a couple of Sifrei Torah. We read Rabbi Zamir Cohen's book, Torah and Science, or it's called Ma'apach, the Coming Revolution, it's called, or Science Comes to Age. It's all the same name, it's all the same book, just has a few titles. We read some other books, Anatomy of a Surge. We read the Shabbat book, which is a book that was written in the 1950s. We read a bunch of books together. What we would do is one of us would read out loud, and the other one would listen. It was a great way to learn Torah together. And this was Gan Eden. We had some good food. We learned some Torah together. And we had peace. No phone, no TV, nothing. It was Gan Eden. We liked it so much, we extended it by almost 2 hours. We didn't want it to end. It was so upsetting. We couldn't wait for the next Shabbat. And that's how Shabbat started. Now, as we continued talking, one day Rabbi Ephraim, who's a genius, by the way, he's accomplished more before the age of 20 than most people do in a lifetime. And B'ezrat Hashem, he will be one of the Gedolei Ador. And Rabbi Ephraim tells me, the way he talks to me is, when you don't know anything, and someone wants to help you, he doesn't talk to you in his level. He talks to you in your level. So he talked to me like an infant. So he would tell me, even though I thought he talked to me in my level, in reality, I realized later on that he talked to me like an infant. And how did he do it? He goes, Yaron, you have to hear this chidush. I have this chidush from the Zohar. Anytime some Jew hears the Zohar, they get excited. I have this chidush from the Zohar. So, wow, you read the Zohar? Yeah, I don't really read the Zohar, but I have this chidush. I have this new insight from the Zohar. You have to listen to it. I said, okay, no problem. Tell me. I can't wait for this chidush. He's like, listen. Rabbi Meir Baal HaNes says, a Jew that marries a Goya loses all of his money, his health, and his Olam Haba. What do you think my reaction was? Who is this Rabbi Meir Baal HaNes? He doesn't know me. What does he know, this Rabbi Meir? I didn't know who Rabbi Meir was. I just know his rabbi. Meir, I thought it was some other rabbi from Chabad or something. Meir, rabbi. Fine, same thing. He doesn't know me. He doesn't know this. He doesn't know that. What does he think he is? I had a conniption. I couldn't accept it. Little did I know, you don't need to go to the Zohar to find this chidush. It's in the 5 books of Moses in Sefer Bereshit. It's in the beginning of the Torah. But if he told me it's in the beginning of the Torah, it's not as interesting. So now I realize, okay, I don't like it, but I kind of have a problem here. So I said, okay, listen, I can't make her do something. I have to find out what it is. Now, until this moment, I thought that Judaism is true, and like Christianity was like second best. It's like the remix. That's what we would call it. We'd make fun of it. You know, back in, a long time ago, back in the day, they would take old music, combine it with rap songs, and they would make it a new hit. So they called it a remix. I said, okay, so Christianity's a remix. So we'd make fun of it. She'd laugh about it, but it was entertaining for us. So I just thought, okay, there's some truth in it. They didn't just make the whole thing up. I mean, come on. You make up a whole book, 100,000 words, 100,000 letters, you're going to make up? By the way, they do that every day. There's a whole series called Harry Potter. So I said, you know what, I need to find out about this. The whole thing never really made sense to me, that some guy died, Jewish, and somehow Christianity was born, and no one has to do any mitzvot. None of that ever made sense to me. I said, okay, well, they believe it. Good luck for them. What do I care? So I said, I need to learn about this. So Rabbi Ephraim says, listen, there's this rabbi called Rabbi Tovia Singer. He's an expert. Start watching his shulim online. I start watching his shulim online. I try to introduce this to my wife. My wife says he speaks too fast. I can't hear it. I can't. He mentions verses. He talks like a computer. I can't do it. Okay, fine. I continue learning. Eventually I start realizing, wait, this Christianity thing is not really second best. It's actually... There's a lot of contradictions here. There's a lot of problems here. It doesn't really make sense. Then eventually one day, I land on a video called Torah and Science. A video called The Debate by Rabbi Mizrahi. I watched the debate by myself, and my heart drops. Because now, for the first time in my life, I realize that Christianity is not a contradiction. Christianity is not a problem. Christianity is fake. It's outright fake. It's man-made. There's zero truth to it. The only true part of the New Testament is the Old Testament. That's it. They say that the Old Testament, a.k.a. Torah, which has 304,800 letters, is the first part. New Testament of 100,000 approximately is a continuation of it. So 400,000 letters approximately. So the only part that's true is the Torah part. Everything else 100% man-made. There's contradictions in it, errors in it, that anyone that ever read the Torah would know it's literally not, it's not like a fake, like it's hard to find out it's fake. It's fake, like if you've ever read the Torah, you would know it's fake. There's mistakes that a 6-year-old yeshiva kid would not make. Such as, for example, the example of Yaakov Avinu is mentioned in the Torah that he came down to Mitzrayim with 70 people. 70. God wrote this in the Torah a few times. In the New Testament, it mentions that Yaakov Avinu came down to Mitzrayim with 75. This is a simple numerical error. God doesn't make numerical errors. People do. Therefore, God didn't write the New Testament. It also has the Me'arat HaMachpelah, the cave of Machpelah, in the wrong address, wrong city. What, they changed location? First place went out of business? You can still find out where it is. It still exists. And so on and so forth. There's many, many contradictions that don't make sense. So now for the first time I realized this is not a problem about trying to convince my wife to convert. It has nothing to do with it anymore. This has now turned into pikuach nefesh. This has now turned into I'm trying to save her. I don't care if she stays with me. She just needs to stop believing this garbage. Now, how do you make somebody unbelieve? You can't just tell them, hey, stop, it's bad for you. Any one of you ever say to your kids, hey, stop, and they stopped right away? Or you have to say it like 6 times. So that's what I had to do. I had to continue learning, and I became obsessed with the topic. I learned as much as possible about Torah, and also about the falsehood of Christianity. And every single day, I would bring new facts to her. It didn't take long for her to realize there's something wrong. One day I told her, listen, you have to watch this video by Rabbi Mizrahi. She said, okay, put it on. Part 1 goes on. She says, he's so arrogant, I can't take it. I don't want to hear it anymore. And the Christian guy is an idiot. I said, okay, but he's still right. Right, whatever, but I don't want to hear anymore. I had to convince her over the next few days to listen to part 2. There's 3 parts. Part 2 goes on. She's even more upset than the first one. She knows it's right, but she hates the guy. Part 3, to this day she never watched. But after the second part, she says, okay, I'll start doing my own research. So she starts doing research. Now, every day I don't care about work anymore. I don't care about pain that I'm in 24 hours a day. Nothing matters anymore. I become obsessed with learning Torah, obsessed with proving everything right, because it's either I'm eating pork on Yom Kippur or I'm keeping everything. Can't be 50-50. If God's real, He's real all the time. Not sometimes. Not when I feel like it. If it's real, we keep everything. No 50%. It's either you go for the whole bank or don't do anything. Be a goy. So I decide that I have to learn all of it, everything, as much as I could possibly absorb. And every day at 6 o'clock in the morning, I'm still learning. I can't wait for her to wake up so I can give her my chidushim. She just wants to wake up and have coffee, and I'm like, here, honey, look what I found. She wasn't exactly happy about it, but this became something she had to get used to. This mad scientist at 6 o'clock in the morning trying to show her why Christianity is fake. So little by little, she started looking into things. She said, listen, I know there's a lot wrong with it. I always knew there's something wrong with it. But I don't know if I'm allowed to convert. I don't know if HaShem wants me to do it. What if this? What if that? I need a sign. I need something. Now at this point, we still didn't know enough to know that we're not allowed to ask God for signs. We're not allowed. Hashem told Avraham Avinu, the stars, you could actually learn a lot from them, but you are not allowed. The goyim are allowed. You could learn the future from the stars, but you're not allowed to do it. The goyim are allowed. Why? You're beyond luck. I decided. So, we didn't know we're not allowed to look for signs. So what do? You start praying for signs. And I've been praying for months already, crying to Hashem every single day, begging Him to show her the truth. I know it's true, it's as clear as day to me, but she just can't see it. She finds a few articles, she starts believing, she starts seeing, she starts finding things on her own. But still, she doesn't have the sign. There's still one missing piece. Now, we've already had a huge miracle with Rabbi Ephraim. He's teaching us as much as possible. But still, she needs something extra. So eventually, I keep learning from different rabbis, different books. And one day, I run into this same rabbi again, Rabbi Mizrahi. And he has this film called Torah and Science. He said, honey, we like science, we like Torah, let's watch this thing. It's only 4 hours. He said, oh, okay, fine. Oh, this guy again? Today, she's his biggest fan. But at that moment, she wasn't. It's this arrogant guy. So we watched part 1. After an hour and a half of finishing part 1, we're both shocked. Everything changed. Whatever we knew just took to the next level. We're like amazed. We're just, wow. Now, what do you do at 2 o'clock in the morning when you finish part 1? You press on part 2. Doesn't matter that it's 2 o'clock in the morning. But part 2 doesn't work. Part 2 doesn't work, and I'm the kind of person that I need to do things in order. Like, in books, where they tell you there's things that, written in the beginning of the book, like the preface and the credits, and the guy thanks his parents and all the people that donated for the book. I'm the guy that reads it. They wrote it for me. Like I have to do things in order. I don't know. It's a thing. It's a tikkun I have in my brain. I have to do things in order. So not having part 2 and skipping to part 3 was just unacceptable to me. But I was desperate. What am I going to do? She's into it. We're pressing part 3, honey. She goes, you're going to do it? We have to do it. So we pressed part 3. We're amazed. We're shocked. It's about 4 o'clock in the morning. We're going to sleep. The next morning we wake up. She's in a Tisha B'Av mood. She woke up on the wrong side of the bed. For the first time in all these years that we've been together, first time I see her in a bad mood. Why? Why are you in a bad mood? I don't know. I know there's something wrong, but maybe it's just better off that God just kills me. Because I know that we're not allowed to be together. That's not doubt. But I'm not leaving, and you're not leaving, but I don't want to destroy your life. So I just prayed all night after the movie for God to either give me the sign and show me the truth, or just kill me. So this is what you pray for? I was so upset. What kind of prayer is that, to die? So apparently God answered our prayer in a different way. I was very upset. I went back to my desk, back to Rabbi YouTube, and I find part 2. And part 2 works. For the first time, part 2 works. I say, honey, I know you're in a bad mood, but you want to watch part 2? She said, you're obsessed anyway. Let's just watch part 2. We watch part 2, and in part 2 of Torah and Science, Rabbi Mizrahi introduces us to something that I heard about, but didn't know much about. But he introduces us to something called Torah Codes. And Torah Codes are secret messages that you can find beyond the literal part of the Torah. Now there's the pshat, which is the basic literal translation of what it says. There's the things that the rabbis give commentary on and explain to us what it means. There's secret parts of the Torah that come from different places. One of those secrets, it's also mentioned that the sages already knew about over 2,000 years ago in the Gemara, Masechet Shabbat, and also in Avodah Zarah, is that Torah codes. Only difference is they were really, really smart. They were able to do it without computers. We are not that smart. We need computers. So these Torah codes find us different messages by calculating an equal mathematical skip between different letters in order to make complete words. So in essence, if you want to find the word Hitler, Yimach Shemo, there's obviously no character in the Torah named Hitler. But you can find the word Hitler if you, let's say, for argument's sake, you find the H, and then there's, let's say, 10 letters, and then there's the I, and another 10 letters, and then there's the T, and another 10 letters, and L, and so on and so forth. But it has to be an equal mathematical skip. It can't be 10, 27, 312, because then it's just random. It has to be an equal mathematical skip to show that it's there by design. But even more so with Torah codes that you won't find in, let's say, a Harry Potter book or a Fiddler on a Roof, is that the codes have to be in a paragraph that has to do with the word. Meaning, the word Hitler, Yimach Shemo, has to be in a paragraph where God talks about something like that. So, for example, all of the things that have to do with the Holocaust, whether it be Hitler, or it be the gas chambers, or the different names of the other Reshaim that murdered our brothers and sisters 70 years ago, all types of names and all types of details and words that are associated with the Holocaust, all of them appear approximately on the same paragraph that has to do with the punishments of what happens when we don't listen to HaShem. And the details of the punishments are exactly what happened. It's in Parashat B'chukotai and also Parashat Kitavo. It even mentions the eagle. And if anyone knows a little bit of history, they know that the logo for the Nazis was the eagle. Same thing as the Romans. So anyway, these are Torah codes. There's obviously a lot more. I'm trying to cut it short because time's running out. But we have something called Torah codes, and Rav Mizrahi wants to show us a few examples. And one of them, he says that HaShem, after we betray Him time and time again. He says at the end of times, you're going to betray him, and he's going to punish you. How? He's going to send you and spread you amongst the four corners of the world. But since he loves you, and since he promised Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov that he's never going to officially abandon you, eventually he's going to bring you back. But not before you make the sin even worse. You sinned already to get kicked out. You're going to sin even more when you leave the land and go to the four corners of the world. What are you going to do in those four corners of the world? And he says literally in Parashat Vayetchanan, chapter 4, verse 27, he says, Hashem will scatter you amongst the people, and you will be left few in number among the nations, where Hashem will lead you. There you will serve gods, the handiwork of man, the gods of wood and stone, which do not see and do not hear and do not eat and do not smell. So here he's telling us not only did we get in enough trouble to get kicked out, but we're going to actually go to the four corners of the world and become idol worshippers. But he gives these idols names. There's two names. There's two major names. It says one God is God of stone, and another God is God of wood. Now, you don't need to know too much to know this sounds familiar. Wood represents the cross, the Christian cross. Stone represents Mecca, where all the Muslims pray. Now this could just be pure coincidence. So that's where Torah Codes comes in. In Torah Codes, it gives us a little more precise detail. And Rabbi Mizrahi shows in the video, and he says, where are the only place in the entire Torah, an entire 304,804 letters, that you can find the names of these false gods? Both of them are not only on this page, but both of them are in the same verse. Ve'efitz, scatter, starts with the second letter is Hey. If you count 49 letters, you get to Chaf, to the word Etchem. If you count 49 letters, you get to Mem. In Yishmeun, that spells Mecca. Same exact words. Yishmeun also has a Vav. You go backwards to Shama, has the Shin. That goes back to Efitz, has the Yud, spells Yeshu. Imach Shemo v'zichro, Jesus in Hebrew. So you have not only similar gods of wood and stone, but you actually have their names. And the only place in the Torah that you can find them is this verse. This is by design. Now I thought this was pretty cool. I've seen some other Torah codes before this, and this one was very good. But to me, it wasn't exactly as big as reading Rav Ephraim. It wasn't as big as discovering how great Shabbat was. It was good. But for her, it was the sign. That's what it was. You can't expect the world to see what you see. They have their own eyes. So now, for her, on that moment, she says, okay, I want to convert. And I'm taking on all of the mitzvot now. One day we're not Jewish. The next day we're taking on everything. Anything we knew. Baruch Hashem, we had a lot of siyata d'ishmaya. We had the conversion go through relatively quickly because we've already learned a lot. We already knew a lot. We were already keeping a lot. On the day of the conversion, we wanted to make sure that everything is kosher, so we had the chuppah on the same day, because obviously we're already living together, so we're not going to go separate. She's going to live in a different house than me. So, but we can't live in the same house not married, so the same day we had the conversion. We also had the chuppah. Kisur Rosh came on the same day. Modesty, mitzvot, everything. Anything we knew, we did. All of a sudden, I look like a rabbi, she looks like a rabbanit, we both look like we were religious for 1,000,000 years. We look like we just came back from Mount Sinai. Now, to finalize it all, at that point, we were on a big high. God made so many miracles for us, it didn't make any sense. But to make sure we knew, then prayer, when he says at the end of Shachrit, if you keep my mitzvot, I'm not going to give you the sickness and the diseases that I gave Mitzrayim. Why? I am God, your healer. So on the same day of the conversion, what no one knew, except her and I, was that I had an infection. A really, really big infection, and I couldn't walk. And I was in enough pain to really say it was made debatable if Gehenom is worse than this. But it didn't matter, because Gan Eden is about to begin. We arrived at the Bet Din, me walking like a penguin because I can't move. They ask her questions. She answers the questions. Instead of 5 minutes, it ends up being an hour and a half of questions because they were just fascinated at how much she knew, as well as one of the Dayanim was late. So instead of 5 minutes, it was an hour and a half of questions. But she answers all the questions, no problem. I'm in a lot of pain, but I'm as excited as can be to see her do as well as she's doing. In the background, you can't see each other. She can't see my face, so no one thinks I'm helping her or anything like that. They ask a lot of tough questions. But I'm watching from the background. And then eventually they tell me, okay, let's go to the mikveh. And I wait outside. And I'm in a lot of pain. And we're planning that as soon as she finishes this mikveh, I'm going to the hospital. There's no chuppah. There's no kiddushim. There's no nothing. I'm having a surgery. And I may not come out for another couple of weeks. But at least she converted. But something strange happens. All of a sudden, I sit there and I'm in an enormous amount of pain. And then it just stops. Stops. The pain just stops. And I feel as normal as I feel right now. Maybe better. She dipped in the mikveh, my pain stopped. Now after she comes out, we're all excited. We call Rabbi Ephraim, we have a Skype in the car. When you see the Skype, we still have the picture of it. Anyone that wants to see it after the shiur, I'll show it to you. It looks like, I don't know, it wasn't really that sunny. But it looks like both of us have some type of like really, really bright light on us. It's a very strange picture. And we're as excited as can be. And she says, wait, aren't you in pain? Aren't we supposed to go to the hospital? I'm like, no, I'm perfect. It's great. It's amazing. She goes, okay. And when we get to where we need to be, I said, okay, honey, I'm going into the bathroom 1 second to change. And part of changing is taking off your clothes. And you take off my clothes, and I see that my clothes and my body's full of blood. I am God, your healer. There's no surgery. Abscess is gone, infection is gone. I just have to take a shower instead. And from that moment on, everything started getting better. Instead of getting infections every single month, they started becoming more rare. Every 3 months, every 6 months. Eventually it stopped coming. Oh, maybe you get it once or twice a year. But they're superficial and maybe annoying for a day. No surgeries, no pain, no nothing. Now when you see this kind of stuff in real life, it's close to home. It's not a story that happened to somebody far away 300 years ago. I was there. Say, okay, this is real. So little by little we decide that we have no interest in the business world. We want to just learn Torah, maybe teach it, and get other people to see what we see. We decide to leave New York, and we have a little bit of business still left. I lost most of my money, but I still had a few $100,000 left in the market. I was managing a small fund. I said, listen, this fund's going to make me a few thousand a month so we could survive. And I'll just learn some Torah. Maybe I'll have a weekly shiur, teach some people the little bit of knowledge that I have. Whatever I know, I'll teach. And I had a weekly shiur every Tuesday. Every Tuesday in my house, a few people would come to my house and we would learn Torah. Baruch HaShem, Hashem gave me the ability to speak. And whatever I learned, I teach it. Interestingly enough, most people didn't know what I knew, so was exciting. It was helping people. Now, after a few months of doing it, I started seeing that these people that came to me completely secular actually are starting to do tshuva. One guy was driving to Beit Knesset for 25 years and no one ever told him it's not allowed on Shabbat. 25 years he's driving on Shabbat to Beit Knesset thinking he's a tzaddik, just like I used to think I was a tzaddik.
A Jew is supposed to feel like a king on Shabbat. And that's why Hashem made Shabbat. But why does Hashem take it so offensively? Why is he so angry when we violate it? Because he's saying to you, I technically created the world in 1 second, or less than a second. In no time. Hashem doesn't have time. The past, the present, the future is all the same to him. I created the world in an instant. Whatever an instant is, he created it in an instant. Right? But I minimized myself to stretch it out for you. For you to feel like me. For you to feel like you are part of creation. For you to feel like God felt on the seventh day. And instead of saying, thank you Hashem, Baruch Hashem for the Shabbat, I can't wait for the Shabbat, let me do great things for the Shabbat, and preparing for the Shabbat, what are you saying? Like that woman, Ichs, I don't want this diamond. I minimize myself, but you're not willing to minimize yourself, to stop your life. Hashem Yitbarach minimized and said, oh, for this Jew, I minimize myself. But he's not willing to minimize himself for Shabbat and stop his job. Or stop his television. Or stop anything else that he's doing. And that is very, very offensive. The Rambam says, whoever observes a Shabbat and honors it, and indulges in its pleasures to the best of his ability, will receive an abundant reward in this world, in addition to the reward set aside for him in the world to come. In the merit of observing Shabbat, just so you know how big it is for tshuva, all of one's sins can be forgiven. Even if someone had worshipped an idol, observing as the halakha dictates, he will be forgiven for it, even for idol worship. That's how strong the Shabbat is.
Another guy got married, had a kid, and then his wife got pregnant again, but he had a visitor. And the visitor wasn't exactly a good visitor. The visitor was trying to convince him to divorce his wife and kill the baby. It's not that good of a visitor. So I had to pretend like I didn't know the story. And I called him and I said, listen, I'm really, really bored. Which, by the way, never ever happens when you learn Torah. So I said, I'm really, really bored learning. I was just wondering, what do you do? Oh, I'm going to do this, and that. Can I hang out with you for a few hours? Oh, yeah, sure, why not? So I hang out with him for the next 6 hours, and today he's an avrech in a kollel. Not a murderer. And little by little you start doing these things, and you see that people change their lives if they only knew the truth. The only reason they lived the way they lived and sinned the way they sinned and went against God the way they did is not because they hate God. They just didn't know. I didn't know. So that's what I decided to do. I'm going to start telling people. But Hashem said, you know what? You have a few distractions. This money thing is a really big distraction. You want to teach people about emunah. Now, the only way you're going to get emunah is if you go through a few tests. So he said, okay, you know what, this few $100,000 that you have left, I'm going to take that too. So on a Tuesday morning, same day I have a shiur, the market opens at 9:30 in the morning. At 9:30 in the morning, I still have a few $100,000 of my money, and some money of a few clients' money. It's enough money to survive, it's enough money to start a new life, it's enough money to do a lot of things. There's virtually very little money in the bank because when you're an investor in the market, you don't believe in banks. You believe in investing. So it's maybe enough money to get through a month or two. Most of the money is in the market, which again is maybe 1% of what we used to have. So we're investing, we're trying to build. At 9:30 in the morning, we have this money. At 9:35, we have zero. The biggest investment we have just announced horrible news. The market overreacted. We were over-leveraged. We made mistakes. The market decided to take advantage of them. Long story short, in 5 minutes, everything went to nothing. In my entire career, that never happened. The fact is that when I lost the money, I knew maybe 50 to 100 times more than what I did when I made the money. Which is the reason why I tell you it was more of a miracle to lose the money than to make it. Usually you gain money when you gain knowledge. In the investment business, knowledge is money. The more knowledge you have, the more money you're going to end up making due to this knowledge. That's why the best firms in the world hire Ivy League students. They want people that are able to grasp a lot of knowledge. They don't care that you got a 4.0. They just care that you have a good memory. And you're able to work through the night without sleeping. That's how you get a 4.0. You don't get a 4.0. You don't get a perfect GPA, perfect scores just because you were born smart. There's plenty of losers that are born smart. Plenty. I hired some of them. Became winners sometimes. But the point is that hard work is what people look for. And I had it. But at 9:35 in the morning, I had nothing. The one thing I did discover that I had that day is that HaShem gave me this emunah. So I said, the prophet Job, who went through some serious difficulties that makes my difficulty seem like Gan Eden, where the Gemara says that it's better to live the miserable life that Job lived for 1 year for 70 years than have one moment in Gehenom. Job lost all of his sons, 10 sons. He lost all of his money. He was a billionaire. He lost all of his health to the point where worms were coming out of his body instead of coming in. He lost everything. Much, much worse than I could ever imagine, despite the difficulty I went through. And the Gemara says his life for 70 years is still not 1 minute in Gehenom. That scared me a lot. So when I realized that this stuff really means something, I read the book. And Job said after he had all this difficulty, while he was having all this difficulty, Hashem Natan, Hashem Lakach, Yishem Hashem Evorach. God gave, God took. May His name be blessed. In the Pirkei Avot, we learn, we have a series we do every Tuesday next door. We learned Pirkei Avot a few months ago, maybe about a month ago. We learned one of the tzaddikim, one of the Chazal, taught us something. Ten lo mishelo, biglal sheshelcha, ve'ata shelo. Give him from yours, because you and what's yours is his. When a person is questioning whether they should give tzedakah or not, whether they should invest in religious school or not, whether they should invest in a Sefer Torah or not, or in the Avrech or not, when you're investing in Torah, in reality you're not investing. All you're doing is you're returning. It's all his. So I said at 9:35 in the morning, I said everything is his. He gave it, he took it. May his name be blessed. I shut off the computer. I went to study for my Shiur Torah. I never turned it on again. And since that day, for the last almost 3 years now, all I've been doing is teaching Torah, learning Torah, and trying to help Am Yisrael come back to Hashem. Any questions? Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen ve'amen.
לא, זה בסדר, יאללה.
יושיענה, אדוני יושיענה, אדוני יושיענה, אדוני יושיענה, אדוני יצליחנה, אדוני יצליחנה, אדוני יצליחנה, אדוני יצליחנה. יבורך כל ישראל,
הקפה שנייה רבותיי,
קדושת ישראל, מפיהם מפיהם, יבורך כל ישראל, מפיהם. אדוני מלך, אדוני ימלוך, לעולם ועד.